My name is Nadine, and I am 67 years old. Last August, my son's in-laws invited me to spend a long weekend at their cottage on Lake Rousseau. 4 days, 3 meals a day, and a language they spoke in front of me, the way you speak in front of someone who has already left the room. They called me La Veuve Tranquille, the quiet widow, the retired woman who used to do paperwork at her husband's little company. They poured my coffee before asking whether I wanted it. Not one of them asked me a single question about my work. By Friday evening, I had heard everything they needed me not to hear. And what I did about it the following Monday, in front of 32 people with a notary standing at the kitchen island, is the reason I am telling you any of this. Welcome back to Fierce Mom Stories, where the quietest woman at the cottage is usually the one who surveyed the land it's sitting on. The invitation came from my daughter-in-law in a text with 3 exclamation points. Weekend at the lake! Maimon and Papa so want to get to know you better. She attached a 2-page itinerary. It had a suggested arrival time. It had a kayak schedule. It had a paragraph about parking near the boathouse, and a paragraph about which bathroom would be mine. At the bottom, in smaller font, no need to bring anything, Nadine. I read it at my kitchen table in Kingston with my coffee going cold, and I could not have told you exactly what bothered me. Something did. Then my son called. He is 40 years old, and he still talks the way he did at 13 when he wanted something from me. Fast and sideways, not quite looking at the question. Mom, just come. It matters to Solange. Not to him. To Solange. The invitation said family. There had not been a family in the way they meant since Claude died in March of 2021 in the Tessier and Environmental Office on Princess Street, with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and a coffee going cold on the desk beside him. On Thursday, the 14th of August, I put 1 bag in the car and drove north on Highway 400, then west on 69 toward Parry Sound, then off onto the Rousseau Road. 2 hours and 50. I have made that kind of drive alone since March of 2021, and I am not going to tell you it gets easy. I stopped at a bakery in Bracebridge and bought a box of butter tarts, because you do not arrive at someone's cottage empty-handed, no matter what their itinerary says. The box sat on the kitchen counter all weekend. Nobody opened it until a neighbor showed up Sunday afternoon and ate 4 of them. The Laval family's cottage sits on the north shore of Lake Rousseau, outside Port Sandfield. If you have not seen Muskoka in August, I cannot explain it well. The water is dark and cold below the surface and brilliant as glass on top, and the granite comes right down to the waterline in great pink shelves, and the birches shake even when the air is still. People drive up from Toronto and Montreal to sit in Adirondack chairs and say the word gorgeous. The cottage is 4,000 square feet of reclaimed timber and fieldstone, 3 sleeping lofts, and a great room with a wall of windows opening onto the deck and the lake. My daughter-in-law's mother met me at the door. She is 63, silver-haired, wearing a linen blazer the color of birch bark without a wrinkle in it. She air-kissed both my cheeks and then turned to my daughter-in-law, who was standing behind her with a stack of folded beach towels, and said something in French. Not English. French. I did not react. I want to be very clear about that, because it matters later. I said the drive had been fine. It had not been fine. There was construction on the 400 south of Barrie that cost me 40 minutes and a tension headache. Nobody asked twice. My daughter-in-law's father came through from the great room with a bottle of Niagara White already open and poured me a glass before asking whether I wanted one. He is 66, broad-shouldered, the kind of confident that comes from 40 years of developers' lunches. Nadine, he said, la mère célèbre, the famous mother. My daughter-in-law's mother had said something at that door. I will come back to what she said. The great room has a fieldstone fireplace, and above it, framed in dark walnut, there is a survey plan. The kind that gets framed when a property has been in a family long enough that the legal description starts to feel like an heirloom. I stopped walking when I saw it. Survey plans are not decorative. Most people hang them because they look technical and important, the way some people hang architectural drawings of houses they no longer live in. But a real surveyor reads a survey plan the way a doctor reads a chart. You see the surveyor's name and license number in the title block, the date, the bearing system, whether the monument set were iron bars or concrete posts, and in the bottom corner, the certification signature. The title block said Tessier Land and Environmental Inc. license number OLS 2847, survey date, April 2003. OLS 2847 was my late husband's Ontario Land Surveyor license number, the one he received in 1989 after articling for 3 years and passing the board exams on the first attempt and celebrating with cheap champagne in our kitchen on Brock Street. We surveyed that lot in April of 2003 for a Laval family trust. I know because I invoiced it. I stood in that great room longer than a guest should stand anywhere. That's the original survey, my daughter-in-law's father said from behind me. Had it framed when we did the renovation. Very historical. I said it was a beautiful piece of work. I did not tell him that the crew chief who set those survey monuments was a young man named Terry Hogg who still works for me, or that the small letter T stamped into the iron bar cap at the southeast corner is how we have marked our monuments since 1997, because Claude thought it was cleaner than a painted stake and more honest than nothing. Not one of them asked how I knew what an Ontario Land Surveyor license number was. Not one of them asked why a retired widow from Kingston would have stopped cold in front of a survey plan. They had already decided what I was, somewhere near the front door, and they were not revising it that weekend. Here is the part they never asked about. In 1985, I graduated from the University of New Brunswick with a degree in geodetic engineering and a license to survey in New Brunswick. In 1988, Claude and I moved to Ontario, and I sat for the AOLS examinations and received OLS 314. We started Tessier Land and Environmental in a rented office above a hardware store on Princess Street that same year, with 2 total stations, 1 truck, and a client list that fit on a single page. I am still the company's secretary, its treasurer, and one of its 3 directors. I did not learn French out of spite. I grew up in Fredericton, New Brunswick, where you speak both languages or you miss half of everything. I studied at l'Université de Moncton for 1 year before transferring to UNB. I have been speaking French in professional contexts since 1983, mostly with Quebec clients, Quebec Crown land offices, and Quebec licensed engineers. It is not the French of Paris or Montreal cocktail parties. It is the French of survey bearings and property disputes and 3-hour drives on Quebec logging roads to find a concrete monument that the province says exists and the forest says it doesn't. So when my daughter-in-law's mother spoke French at her own front door, I understood every word. Dinner, that first evening, was 8 people at a table built for 12. My daughter-in-law's parents, my son and my daughter-in-law, 2 couples from down the lake who were perfectly pleasant, and me at the end with a wine glass I was mostly holding to give my hands something to do. One of the neighbors asked what I had done before retiring. I opened my mouth. My son answered for me. Mom did the admin at the company for years, he said. Kept the books, kept Dad honest. There was a small, warm laugh around the table, the kind that costs nobody anything. Something like that, I said. I could have corrected him. I want you to understand that I have not corrected him in 3.5 years. Since Claude died, every time someone asks, my son has given them the short version, and the short version is easier, and the short version is wrong. My daughter-in-law's mother leaned toward my daughter-in-law and said, in French, quietly, "Thank God. I was afraid we'd spend all weekend talking about setback regulations." My daughter-in-law laughed, which meant the table laughed, because that is how a table works. I took a sip of wine. The salmon was very good. My daughter-in-law's mother had made a dill cream sauce and mentioned twice that she had done it without measuring anything. I filed this alongside several other details and said nothing. After dinner, my daughter-in-law's father walked me out to the deck to tell me about himself, which he did not experience as a favor to himself, but it was. He had been developing residential and commercial properties in the Greater Toronto Area since 1989. Mixed use in Mississauga, a subdivision outside Barrie that he called transformative. He was good at these stories. He had told them to many people on many decks. Then his voice dropped and got quieter and got interesting. We had a problem, he said, 3 years ago. A zoning variance in Simcoe County. The county required a licensed Ontario land surveyor to sign off on a revised plan of subdivision. Our man retired. The replacement we hired was not rigorous. He swirled his wine. The plan had an error, 0.5 centimeter on paper, but 2.3 meters onto the municipal road allowance on the ground. The county flagged it. We pulled the application. 18 months of work. I know exactly what that means. It means the approval clock restarts. It means your construction financing is in default. It means a project that was supposed to break ground in spring breaks ground, if you're lucky, 2 years later at higher material costs. That sounds like it got expensive, I said. I was 63 years old, he said, and a 31-year-old at the county office called our file a compliance issue. He said the words like they still had a splinter in them. Then he smiled and refilled my glass. Water under the bridge. I get up at 6, whether there is anywhere to be or not. Saturday morning I made coffee in their kitchen, took my book to the great room, and sat where I could see the lake going from gray to silver to that particular Muskoka blue that people spend a great deal of money to be near. I had brought a field notebook with me. I always do. My daughter-in-law came downstairs at 7:15, hair already done, barefoot, in a robe that probably cost more than my kayak. "Oh, let me," she said, and picked up the field notebook before I could say anything. She carried it to the bookshelf and slid it in spine inward so the pages faced out instead of the cover, so it doesn't leave a ring, and set a coaster where the notebook had been. Then she looked at the chair I was sitting in, the one facing the window and the lake, and made a small, sympathetic expression. "You'll be so much more comfortable in the reading chair," she said. The reading chair was in the corner. It faced the fireplace, away from the lake. I thanked her and sat in it. She had, in under 5 minutes, moved my book, relocated my seat, and reversed the direction I was facing. She had done every bit of it out loud and smiling. "Just relax, Nadine," she said. "This weekend is for you." She said that at 7:22 in the morning. By 7:30, she was on the deck with her mother, and neither of them came back inside for an hour. Saturday afternoon, my daughter-in-law's father took a call and did not leave the room for it. He said the caller's name when he answered, Gauthier. I was in the adjacent sitting area with a book I was not reading. He spoke in English. He does everything that matters in English. And he said 3 things I needed to hear, and then he went back out to the deck. The first, the license is the whole point. Without assigning OLS on the letterhead, we can't submit anything to the county. The second, she'll sign whatever my son-in-law puts in front of her. She always does. The third, once the shares are in Solange's name, I'm the beneficial owner on paper by November. I put my book down. I looked at the survey plan above the fireplace. I looked at the T stamped into the iron bar cap at the southeast corner, set in the ground by Terry Hogg in April of 2003. The license he was talking about was OLS 30 War T Forn. My license. Not my son's. My son is not a surveyor and has never claimed to be one. The company holds corporate approval through my license and one other licensed employee. If my daughter-in-law's father controlled the company, he controlled the only credential that allowed us to submit signed survey plans to municipalities, counties, and the provincial crown. That is the kind of access developers pay a great deal for and wait a long time to obtain. I held my wine glass by the stem and I made my hand be still. On Saturday evening, we ate dinner on the deck. My daughter-in-law was in a fine mood, talkative the way she gets when things are going her way, saying things sideways the way she does. My husband and I finally did the estate planning thing, she said to the table at large. Everyone should. You do it once, and it's done. My son looked at his plate. My daughter-in-law's father nodded slowly. It's just practical, she said. Do you know what the liability exposure looks like for a professional survey company? 1 unsigned plan. 1 wrong bearing. The firm can be on the hook for a neighbor's driveway that ends up inside someone's septic setback. I do know. I have known since 1992. I have carried that knowledge in my license number and my professional liability policy for 32 years. We had a situation once, I said. My voice came out in its ordinary register, a plan we signed in 1998. The client built a fence. It turned out the fence was 2 meters onto the adjacent parcel. We fixed it. Nobody sued, but I know what the exposure looks like. My daughter-in-law's smile stayed exactly where it was and moved about a 1/4 inch further from her eyes. "You're funny, Nadine," she said, and moved on to something else. But she had told me something. She had told me this weekend had a plan, and the plan had started with paperwork, and the paperwork had her name on it. Late Saturday afternoon, I walked up from the dock to get a sweater. Muskoka evenings come in fast, even in August. My daughter-in-law's father was at the top of the dock path with his back to the cottage, on the phone, not lowering his voice because there was no one within earshot, except a woman he had already decided was scenery. "No, Gauthier, that's handled. She'll sign it Saturday or Sunday, and if she doesn't, it doesn't matter. She signs whatever her son puts in front of her." A pause. The mother is a formality. I did not stop walking. 3 steps at a slightly slower pace, and then I kept going, because the only thing worse than being underestimated is letting someone discover you noticed. I got my sweater. On the way back through the great room, I stopped at the survey plan. I put 2 fingers on the southeast corner of the paper where the bearing annotation showed N47 degrees 22E, the bearing of the east boundary, computed by Claude on a Tuesday evening in April of 2003 using a traverse run from a geodetic control monument on the Rousseau Road. He worked at the drafting table until 11 o'clock to get the closure to come in under 1 part in 10,000. He said it was excessive. I said it would be on someone's wall one day. It was on their wall. If you have ever recognized your own work in someone else's house and said nothing about it, you already know how the rest of this goes. Stay with me. Leave a comment with the word survey if someone has ever introduced you as less than you are. And subscribe, because the paperwork is coming. Before dinner, I walked to the end of the boat launch where I could get 2 bars of signal and called my company's lawyer, Brigitte Fauché. Brigitte is 56, does corporate and property work on Wellington Street in Kingston, and has a voice like a weather forecast, calm, direct, and never surprised by what she finds. I asked about the renewal on our general liability policy, and we handled it in 2 minutes. Then she mentioned, while she had me, that the book value certificate cycle for the annual corporate review was coming up. "Same method as always?" "Same as always," I said, and we hung up. Book value. The shares of Tessier Land and Environmental are valued on our books at the price we paid for things when we paid for them. The office on Princess Street sits on our books at $127,000. That is what Claude and I paid for it in 1998 when we bought it after 11 years of renting. That property is worth somewhere between $520,000 and $580,000 today, according to the city's assessed value and the last 2 comparable sales on the block. Our total stations, GPS receivers, data collectors, all depreciated on a 5-year schedule, which means equipment we replaced last year is on the books at a fraction of what we paid, and anything from before 2019 is at 0. Book value does not care what something is worth now. It cares what something cost then. It is the most honest and the most brutal number in accounting, and I have loved it my entire career. It tells the absolute truth about the past and a barefaced lie about the present, and it never apologizes for either. I put the phone in my pocket. I went back inside. I did not think about it again, not that night. After dinner, my daughter-in-law's mother and I washed the crystal together, because she does not put crystal in a machine, and neither do I. It turned out to be the only thing we had in common. She had been at the wine since 5. Not staggering, just loosened. She told me she was from Abitibi in northern Quebec, a mining town, a father who worked the ore processing plant for 26 years, a mother who took in alterations and came home with chalk lines on her fingers, and a permanent squint from fine stitching in poor light. She got a bursary, she said. She studied in Montreal because it was the furthest thing from Abitibi she could think of. She said it was how you always know what kind of woman you are looking at. You can tell, she said, where a person started. I dried a glass and set it on the shelf. I thought about a woman in Abitibi with chalk on her fingers, and I thought about how her daughter had gotten out and had spent 40 years since deciding who was allowed to follow. "Good night," I said. The house went quiet around 11. I came downstairs at 11:40 for water, feeling my way by the little stair lights because everything in that cottage is thought about. My daughter-in-law's father was still up at the kitchen island with a glass of rye and 2 sheets of paper squared up on the granite in front of him. A pen laid across them at a slight angle, the way a server sets a bill. He slid them toward me. Perfect timing. Saves me chasing you in the morning. Just a cleanup for the estate plan. Roland drafted it. 2 pages. I picked them up. The heading in bold capitals, consent to transfer and waiver of shareholder. I put on my reading glasses. I have worn them on a chain since 2004. And I read the document the way I have read documents for 35 years, out of order, recitals first. Because recitals are where people tell you the truth by accident. 3rd recital, 2nd line, that certain domestic contract dated July 18th, 2025, by and between Joel C. Tessier and Solange A. Laval Tessier. And in the operative paragraph, the part I was being asked to sign, the undersigned shareholder unconditionally waives any and all rights under Section 6 of that certain shareholders agreement, dated March 14, 1988, as amended and restated September 2, 2010. 3 things arrived in my mind at the same time, in this order. My son had signed a domestic contract 6 weeks ago and had not mentioned it to me. This weekend was not an invitation. And whoever drafted this document had read Section 6 very, very carefully. I set the papers down on the granite. I left my distance glasses in the car, I said. These are for reading up close only. I'll look at it properly in the morning. I was wearing my reading glasses. He did not know this because knowing it would have required looking at my face at some point in the last 36 hours. "Nadine," he said, "it's genuinely just a formality." "Then it'll keep until morning," I said. He said something about how tired I must be from the drive. I said good night. I took my water upstairs and I did not sleep. That cottage is 30 years old. Old cottages have iron floor registers, the kind that sit in the floorboards and open straight down into the ceiling of the room below. Mine was under the east window, 4 feet from the bed. At midnight, I heard chairs push back from the kitchen table. My daughter-in-law, in French, low and careful. She didn't sign it. My daughter-in-law's mother, in French, the way you answer a question you have already answered. Don't worry. She doesn't understand what she's looking at. Then my daughter-in-law's father, in English, because he does everything that matters in English. Gauthier says that clause is the only thing standing between us and the license assignment. Once Solange holds the shares, we have signing authority by December. A chair scraped, water ran, someone laughed at something small. I lay on my back in a guest room on Lake Rousseau and counted the ceiling beams. There were 9. I counted them more times than that. My daughter-in-law's mother was half right about me. There was one thing in that cottage I had not yet fully understood. I had a copy of it in a fireproof box in Kingston, and my signature was on the last page, and it had been sitting in that box since September of 2010. I put my bag in the trunk on Sunday morning at 9:15. The lake was flat, mist coming off the water in thin strips. It was, and I will give them this, the most beautiful thing I had looked at in a very long time. My son came out barefoot. You're leaving early. Long drive, I said. He asked if I was okay in the voice he uses when he wants the answer to be yes, so we can both go back to what we were doing. I closed the trunk and turned around. What did you sign on July 18th? He blinked twice. It's just protection, he said. Solange's dad walked me through the whole thing. It's standard. Did you read Section 6? Section 6 of what? And there it was. My son, 40 years old, a director of the company his father and I built in a rented office above a hardware store, did not know what Section 6 said. He had signed that shareholders agreement at our kitchen in September of 2010. He was 25. He had a pen in one hand and a piece of butter tart in the other, and he signed 8 pages without turning any of them over. I let him because he was 25 and I thought there would be time. I looked at him for a moment. You knew I speak French, Joel. His face went red from the collar up. It has done that since he was 9. I didn't think it would come up, he said. I got in the car. I did not go home. I drove straight down to the Tessier and Environmental Office on Princess Street and let myself in with the key I have carried since 1988. I turned on the lights. The office smelled like ink and old paper, and the particular dry quiet of 35 years of survey records. I sat at Claude's desk, which nobody has moved since March of 2021, and I opened the fireproof box behind the filing cabinet. The shareholders' agreement of Tessier Land and Environmental Inc., dated March 14, 1988, amended and restated September 2, 2010. 4 signatures on the last page. Mine, Claude's, my son's, and Terry Hogg's, who came in as a 10% shareholder in 2010. I hold 45%. My son holds 45%. Terry holds 10%. I read Section 6 aloud in that empty office because you catch more in a document when you make your mouth do the work. Section 6.1. No shareholder shall transfer any shares without first offering them to the remaining shareholders in proportion to their holdings. Standard. Every closely held corporation in Ontario has some version of it. Section 6.2. Transfer shall include any transfer to a spouse and any transfer effected pursuant to any domestic contract, cohabitation agreement, marriage contract, or separation agreement under the Family Law Act. I read that sentence 3 times in Claude's chair. Section 6.3. The purchase price shall be book value per share, determined by the corporation's accountant in accordance with the corporation's historical accounting method. Section 6.4. Written notice shall be provided within 30 days of any instrument constituting a trigger event. Remaining shareholders shall have 60 days from actual notice to elect to purchase. I sat there with my hand over my mouth like a woman at a funeral because I understood finally what the entire weekend had been. Every arranged chair, every refilled glass, every page of that itinerary. They needed my signature on a waiver. Because the moment my son signed a domestic contract, he had, under a document he signed at my kitchen table at 25 years old, made an offer to me. He did not know it, but under Section 6, he had put 45% of Tessier Land and Environmental in front of his mother and asked if she wanted it. I drove home and opened Claude's blue field notebook on the kitchen table, the one he used for traverse computations, the one with his handwriting on every page. I did not need to look anything up. I just wanted to hold something he had held. Tuesday morning, I sat across from Brigitte Fauchère in her office on Wellington Street, with a view of a parking structure. Brigitte read for 12 minutes without speaking or moving her face. Then she said, "This clause has been exercised before. A statement, not a question." 2003, I said. My brother-in-law Warner held 15% from 1995 on. He died in the spring. Claude and I bought his shares back under this exact section at book value. His widow's lawyer looked at it for 8 weeks and told her to take the check. You were involved? I wrote the check, I said. Brigitte set the agreement down. Then it isn't decorative, she said. A restriction nobody has ever enforced starts to look like a suggestion. One that's been enforced once, cleanly, with opposing counsel who folded, is a live wire. She walked me through it in plain words twice because I asked her to. The domestic contract signed July 18th was the triggering instrument. My son was obligated to give written notice within 30 days. He gave none. That was a breach, and it did not help him, but it did not extinguish my rights either. It only meant my 60-day clock had not started. My 60 days ran from actual notice, she said. When did you first see a reference to the domestic contract? 11:35 on Saturday night, I said, August 16th. Then you have until October 14th, she said. How fast can you access funds? How much time do I have to be polite? About 4 days, she said. On Wednesday, our accountant Dave Nakamura issued a book value certificate for Tessier Land and Environmental Inc. as of July 18, 2025. Dave has done our books since 1995 and delivers every number in the same tone, whether it's good news or a reckoning. Book value per share: $94. There are 8,000 shares. There have been 8,000 shares since 1988 because Claude did not believe in diluting anything, including coffee. I hold 3,600 shares. My son holds 3,600. Terry holds 800. 3,600 shares at $94 per share, $338,400. Now the other number. In February of 2025, a regional engineering firm out of Ottawa sent my son an unsolicited letter of interest valuing the whole company at $4.1 million for acquisition. He forwarded it to me with 2 question marks. We both said no. 45% of $4.1 million is $1,845,000. $338,400 versus $1,845,000. Same shares, same week. 2 entirely different worlds. The only thing standing between them is which number a piece of paper says to use. The Princess Street property is on the books at $19.98 cost, Dave said on the phone, in his weather report voice. You understand what that does to this number? I know, I said. I signed the check when we bought it. On Thursday morning, I called André Pellerin in Quebec City. André is 60 years old, holds a Quebec land surveyor license, and we have worked together on cross-border projects and federal crown land matters since 1996. I called because we had a survey matter on the Quebec side of the Ottawa River. We handled it in 10 minutes. Then she said, while she had me, someone had called her office the previous week. A developer from Toronto, Bertrand Laval. I said nothing. He wants a Quebec OLS on a retainer. He's setting up a new company. He called it Laval Tessier Development Partners. She said the name carefully. Nadine, why is your name in this company's description? It isn't, I said. He seems to expect it will be by December. I told her the short version, then the long one. Then I asked whether she would be in Muskoka the following Sunday. My daughter-in-law's father had mentioned a gathering, and she said, as it happened, he had already invited her. He invited me as a potential business partner, she said. I accepted because I wanted to see the lake. Should I still go? Yes, I said. I'll be there too. Brigitte's office sent the election notice by registered mail on Thursday afternoon. Notice of election to purchase pursuant to Section 6.4 of the shareholders' agreement of Tessier Land and Environmental Inc., electing to purchase all 3,600 shares held by Joel C. Tessier at book value per share of $94. Total consideration $338,400 attached. The book value certificate from the company's accountant and a bank commitment letter from RBC Kingston. An election you cannot fund is a bluff. I have never sent a bluff. I drove it to the post office on Division Street and stood in line behind a woman mailing a birthday parcel. The clerk stamped the tracking card and handed me the receipt. The tracking number ended in 7831. Expected delivery, Monday, August 24th. That evening, my daughter-in-law texted, Sunday still on. Dad's making an announcement. I held the phone for a long time. I want to be honest about what I decided, because I have thought about it since. I did not decide to go up there and confront anyone. I am not built for it. I decided that I had been invited to a party and that registered mail moves at the speed of a federal agency that does not care about anyone's weekend, and that whatever happened on Sunday, that envelope was landing Monday morning whether I was there or not. I typed back one word, yes. Sunday, the 23rd of August. 32 people on that lawn, couples from along the lake, business associates from Toronto, a notary from Barrie in a blazer. 2 grandchildren running loops from the dock to the deck. Somebody had strung a banner between 2 birch trees. I arrived at 4 o'clock in a gray linen jacket and dark trousers with another box of butter tarts from the Bracebridge Bakery. This time, a neighbor named Donna put them on a plate and asked where I was from. Kingston, I said. She said her daughter had gone to Queens. That was the nicest 2 minutes of both weekends. At 4:40, my daughter-in-law's father stepped up onto the deck stairs and tapped a wine glass with a spoon. Families, he said, are like survey townships. They work when the boundaries are clear. A few people laughed. He waited. By October, this room becomes Laval Tessier Development Partners. We're building something that will outlast all of us. My daughter-in-law's mother put her hand on her heart. My daughter-in-law beamed. My son stood beside her with both hands in his jacket pockets and his eyes on the dock boards. Then the front door opened. Andrée Pellerin came through that cottage, the way she enters every room she has ever walked into, directly and slightly impatient with the distance between where she was and where she was going. She is 60, gray-haired, reading glasses pushed up into her hair where they live. My daughter-in-law's father saw her from the deck and moved toward her with his arms already coming up, already saying her name. She walked past him. She came straight across the great room to where I was standing near the fireplace, and she took both my hands, and she kissed me on both cheeks, and she started talking in French. Fast and warm, and full of 30 years of shared history. The Ottawa River Traverse of 2004. The 5 weeks a Quebec Crown land file sat in a government office because someone had used the wrong datum. Her daughter, who used to answer the office phone at age 8 and call me la Madame de l'Ontario qui ne se trompe jamais, the Ontario lady who is never wrong about the closure. And I answered her in French, all of it, without pausing for a word. A room doesn't go silent. That is something that only happens in films. In real life, a room drops one level all at once, like a furnace cutting off, and everyone keeps talking, except they are all talking a little more carefully and a little more quietly. The business associates from Toronto turned in their chairs. The notary from Barrie set down his glass. My daughter-in-law's mother was standing at the kitchen island with a bottle in her hand. I watched the color leave her face. Andrée looked around at the room and said, in English, "Why is everyone so quiet? She is the only person here I came for." My daughter-in-law's father recovered fast. I will give him that. He laughed, clapped his hands once, and reached behind him to the island and picked up 2 sheets of paper, the same 2 sheets, and held them out toward me. Perfect timing. Nadine, while we have everyone here and a notary in the room, let's make this official tonight. I set my wine glass down on the granite, gently. It still made a sound. And in a room that had already dropped 1 level, 32 people heard it. Then I said 1 sentence in French, looking at my daughter-in-law's mother. About half the room understood it. Donna from down the lake did not, so I said it again in English for her. Don't worry. She doesn't understand what she's looking at. My daughter-in-law's mother opened her mouth. You said that Friday when I walked through the door, I said. You said it Saturday afternoon on the deck 6 feet from my chair, and you said it at 12:15 Saturday night in the kitchen through a floor register that opens directly into the guest room ceiling. I was not loud. I have never once in my life gotten anywhere by being loud. I'm not going to sign it, I said. Not tonight, not Monday, not at all. My daughter-in-law's father said my name in the voice you use on a situation you expect to manage. You don't need to understand the legal side of this. Section 6.2, I said. He stopped. Shareholders Agreement of Tessier Land and Environmental Incorporated, dated March 14, 1988, amended and restated September 2, 2010. Section 6.2's transfer to include any transfer effected pursuant to a domestic contract under the Family Law Act. When my son signed on July 18th, that was a triggering event. It also triggered his obligation to give written notice to the remaining shareholders within 30 days. He didn't. I looked at the notary from Barrie, who had gone a remarkable color. My election notice was sent Thursday by registered mail. Tracking ends in 7831. It delivers tomorrow morning. Election to purchase all 3,600 shares held by my son at book value per share as certified by the company's accountant. $94 per share. Total consideration. $338,400. Funded. The bank commitment letter is in the envelope. Someone behind me did the multiplication quietly and got it wrong. My daughter-in-law said very fast and very quietly, "Papa, what is book value?" And I said the thing I had been carrying since the top of that dock path on Saturday afternoon. Your father told his colleague that I was a formality. He was right. I'm Section 6 formality. Then he came apart, which I had not expected to find instructive and did not enjoy. He got loud about family, about the years of work, about opportunity he had handed my son that he could not have built on his own. He brought his hand down flat on the granite island, hard enough to rattle Donna's butter tart plate. My daughter-in-law's mother went the other direction, which is always harder for me to watch. She cried and said they had opened their home. They had welcomed me. They had treated me like one of their own. We gave you a family, she said. I had been in their home for 3 days. In 3 days, they had moved my chair, hidden my notebook, poured my drinks without asking, and spoken another language in front of me at a distance of 6 feet. I turned to Andre. I pointed at the survey plan above the fireplace and asked her one question in French. She walked over. She looked at it for no more than 5 seconds, the way you look at a face you have known a long time. Tessierland, she said. April 2003. I remember because we were trying to get a similar lot done on the Quebec's side that spring, and you had the only crew available with a Trimble unit that could reach the geodetic network. My firm surveyed this property, I said to the room. My late husband computed the traverse. The iron bar at the southeast corner has a T stamped into the cap. That is how we have marked our monuments since 1997. My daughter-in-law's father said something about ancient history. I made the door, I said. The one you've been standing in all weekend. One of the Toronto associates set his glass on a side table and picked up his jacket from the back of a chair. His partner followed 2 minutes later. That is what a reputation sounds like when it leaves a room. It is not dramatic. It is just a screen door. My son followed me out onto the lawn. The light was going gold on the water, and somewhere down the lake a motorboat was coming in, and it was again the most beautiful thing I had looked at in years. Mom, please. I turned around. Did you read it? He looked at the dock boards. Did you know I speak French? He looked at the grass. Yes. I nodded once. That was all I had for that. Here is what happens, I said. I buy your shares at the price in the agreement you signed. That closes in October, and then I am going to put a written offer in your hands to sell those same shares back to you. Same section, same price, $94 per share, good for 5 years. He stared at me. What's the condition? You come alone, I said, and you read it before you sign it. He opened his mouth. From up on the deck, my daughter-in-law called his name. My son turned his head toward the deck. He did not go, he just turned his head. But I had my answer before he did, and so did he, and we both stood there on that lawn knowing it. Go on, I said, and I meant it kindly. It's your party. I drove home. 2 hours and 50 minutes south on the 69, then the 400, then into Kingston as the sun was finishing. The construction south of Barrie was finally cleared. I turned the radio on. The registered mail card came back Monday, signed for at 9:48 in the morning. My daughter-in-law's father's lawyer sent 2 letters. The first said my election was procedurally defective. The second said the domestic contract was not a transfer within the meaning of Section 6. Brigitte answered both with 1 letter and 1 attachment. A photocopy of the signature page from September 2010, my son's name in his own handwriting, on a document that defined domestic contracts as triggering events in language that did not leave room for argument. Nobody filed a claim. People with a real argument file claims. People without one send letters. We closed on Thursday, the 16th of October, in Brigitte's office on Wellington Street, in a room that smelled like carpet and old files and the particular quiet of a place where things get settled. $308,400. $190,000 of it was mine, from Claude's insurance and 40 years of not spending money on things I did not need. The remaining $148,400 came from a line of credit against my shares at RBC, which I am paying down at $2,200 a month and expect to have clear in about 6 years, when I will be 73. I hold 7,200 of 8,000 shares of Tessier Land and Environmental Inc. Terry Hogg holds the other 800, and she still runs the field crews, and she still signs her name to survey plans that go into county registries and municipal files, and occasionally into walnut frames on cottage walls. Andre called my daughter-in-law's father's office in the last week of October to decline the retainer arrangement. She told them she had no interest in working with a company whose organizational structure she could not verify. Laval Tessier Development Partners was registered in August and voluntarily dissolved in November. I know the dates because they are public record, and I am the kind of person who checks. My daughter-in-law moved back to her parents' condominium in Mississauga sometime in September. I did not ask, and nobody told me. I heard it from Dave Nakamura, who hears everything and relays it in the same tone he uses for amortization schedules. My son rents the small apartment above the office. It is the same office his father and I started in 1988, with a window that looks out over the parking lot and the survey truck, and he pays me $600 a month because he insisted and I let him. He comes to work every day. He is learning the field side, finally, at 40, which is not the worst time to learn it. We have lunch on Tuesdays. We do not talk about the agreement. My daughter-in-law's mother sent a card in November, a watercolor of a lake on the front. Not Lake Rousseau, just a generic northern lake. Inside, she had written that she hoped we could find a way past this unfortunate misunderstanding and that she wished me well in whatever came next. I sat down twice with a pen. I could not find one true sentence to write back, and I am too old to send false ones. Claude's Bluefield notebook lives open on my kitchen table now, because I have stopped putting it away for company. His handwriting is on every page. The closure formula he wrote out for me in 1987, when I was studying for my OLS exams, is still there on page 9. The formula still works. It has always worked. Next to it is a sealed envelope addressed to my son. Inside is a one-page offer to sell him 3,600 shares of Tessier Land and Environmental Inc. at $94 per share, good through October 16, 2030. I have not mailed it yet. He knows it exists. That is the point of it. I am not angry at those people. I am finished explaining myself to them, which is a different thing, and a better one. Here is the only piece of this I would hand to anyone else. When someone decides that you don't understand what is in front of you, that decision has never once determined what you actually understand. It only determines how much they will say in front of you. And if you can hold still long enough and stay quiet long enough, they will eventually hand you the paperwork themselves. That's my story. One long weekend, 2 sheets of paper, and a clause I drafted myself in 1988. If it makes you want to go back and read something you signed a long time ago, do it this week. Share this with someone who needs it. Comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.